Well, the BBC China money scandal has blown up yet again. It's another big disclosure made by Rajya Sabha parliamentarian Mahesh Jethmalani on BBC. According to the UK media, BBC has invested in Chinese state firms, and it's a massive £150 million of investment that has allegedly been done by BBC. Now, where lies the problem? With regards to the £150 million that has been pumped into Chinese state-owned companies that have been accused to links to appalling human rights violations. Joining us on this broadcast is Rajya Sabha parliamentarian and senior advocate Mahesh Jethmalani. Mr. Jethmalani, thank you very much for speaking to Republic TV. Yet another disclosure, this time about the activities of the BBC with regards to supporting Beijing's totalitarian regime. The article that has been shared by you, Mr. Jethmalani, essentially talks about linkages with companies that have appalling track record of human rights violations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a twin angle to this particular article. One is that not only has BBC been receiving funds from Chinese state-owned companies, which unquestionably undermines their independence, and from India's point of view, sheds light on why there has been such a long history of anti-India propaganda by the BBC. But not only were they receiving money, but now it shows that their employees, 47,000 of their employees' pension funds have now been invested in 10 to 12, and this is at least 150 million pounds. The figure might go up much higher because if you've seen the article, only 20% of its pension funds have been disclosed so far. So we don't know how much more of their pension funds have been disclosed in myriad Chinese. So, now it just shows the complete the financial interlock between BJ. First they receive it, BBC receives money, and then it invests its employees' provident funds, its pension funds, into these state-owned companies. So they're completely financially locked in with China.
Mr. Jethmalani, in fact, not just here in India, but the fact that even in the United Kingdom, a Tory leader, Duncan Smith, had also raised this entire issue. And while not much has spoken about, but many seem to be completely astonished in the manner BBC has been operating. And the fact of the matter is that the money is being pumped into companies which have atrocious track record.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other aspect. As I was just about to say that. One is, of course, the financial linkages, right? And the depth and extent of those linkages undermine its independence. I mean, they cannot possibly then be seen to be writing about, anti-Indian stuff, which basically only suits China. Secondly, it's complete hypocrisy. On the one hand, your London, your head office in London is going about and one of the talking about human rights violations by the Chinese state, which of course is aided in these matters by Chinese state-owned companies. So they're going on exposing this. One of them who exposed the appalling violations on the Uyghur community in Xinjiang, he was actually expelled by. He was detained and expelled by the Chinese state. So on the one hand, your own reporters, you are reporting on human rights violations in China. Your reporters are being, repressed for it, detained and then deported. And on the other hand, you are investing in those very companies who are responsible for those human rights violations. I mean, what happened in India, the last PM documentary, was a hatchet job, right? Now, two can play at this game. And ours is not a hatchet job. This is your own country's reporting. These are your own MPs. And we have undeniable proof about your linkages. So,
Mr. Jethmalani, I would like to make an attempt to try and link another issue with this particular matter in terms of the Chinese operations. When the Enforcement Directorate was basically carrying out their investigation into various companies, for instance, Xiaomi being one of them, it turns out that there is a larger playbook at play, at least here in India. If you juxtapose that with the situation with the reportage of the BBC, then it only clearly goes on to indicate that the CCP is only trying to ensure that these elements come together and try and discredit the growth story of India. Look at the money where it's going into Chinese overseas land and investment. Then you have the China Construction Bank Corporation, clear link with the CCP members.
Right, absolutely. I mean, they're on the boards of these banks. Communist Party members are on these bank boards. I mean, look, in China, in any case, right, the CCP controls everything. Between the CCP and the PLA, they control everything. China is undoubtedly an army with a country and not a country with an army, right? And everything is controlled by the CCP. So you've seen the way they've treated their own population from times immemorial, beginning with the Great Leap Forward, let 100 flowers bloom, and now the Tiananmen Square, and right now the way their COVID patients have been treated. So, it's a completely totalitarian state. They abuse their own citizens, Tibetans, Mongols, Uyghurs. And the BBC, that I have to say, that epitome of hypocrisy, right, is writing anti-India stuff, right? Given the fact that it is actually a complete slave to China. It is a matter of great shame, and the BJP and the BBC should be absolutely ashamed of its conduct.
Mr. Jethmalani, just one more question that I would like to take. This was the first part of my question, the previous question, with regards to the playbook of the Chinese. The operations the Chinese have had here in India also, various companies have now come under the scanner of our central agencies, and it only goes on to indicate that there is a larger design, a nefarious design that is at play. Central agencies in their investigation have made it abundantly clear that dubious funding is taking place, and it only hits out at the growth story of India.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt that even in India, the state-owned companies which are here, apart from the fact that they're indulging in a lot of malpractices which are being investigated by, ED and CBI, right? There are a lot of malpractices by a host of Chinese companies operating in India. There is no doubt that these companies are also spreading their wings in the matter of espionage.
Mr. Jethmalani, this is Abhishek this side. You're making a very serious charge that BBC perhaps indulged in some element of espionage on behalf of the Chinese paymasters. But the Chinese playbook that we have been discussing after you really brought out this aspect of BBC's connection with China has played out in many countries. How really, is there some thought, because you are from the ruling dispensation, from the party in power, is there some thought in the establishment as to how to deal with this situation where China increasingly uses its money muscle, through its proxy Pakistan, and now in this case through its proxy BBC, to push its agenda and to compromise India's national security interests? I am sure the establishment must have got thinking over the last couple of days as to how to tackle this situation.
This is a completely, effort on my part. This is not, I have no doubt that the what you call the establishment has taken cognizance of these facts, and I have no doubt that the establishment will take appropriate steps to do what is necessary to prevent a very sinister means of, A, perhaps surveillance, and B, infiltration into our many institutions in this country through ostensibly, independent companies. So I have no doubt that everybody's taking cognizance of that and their activity. But what exactly those steps will be, I don't know. I think, with this kind of financial interlocking with an enemy state of India, right? An enemy country. It's a designated enemy country. Why do we need BBC in India anymore? I mean, just to listen to all this. Just because
I was actually coming to that.
Yeah, exactly.
I was coming to that. You know, in 1970s, it was banned once, and with a different government. At that time, a strong prime minister. You think that's a possibility to send across a message?
Well, in this case, I don't know. You know, the 1970 exact background. I don't know. There was some criticism of the then prime minister, right? And she acted to nip that in the bud. In this case, we are much more informed, and you know, we are. Anybody would be justified in taking stringent action against the BBC because there's a judicial verdict. I mean, there have been commissions of inquiry, there have been trial court judgments, there have been Supreme Court judgments only till as recently as April. So this year, 2022. So, you know, given all that, there is a strong reason to believe that this is a completely motivated piece of, you know, yellow journalism. It is a hatchet job. And therefore, you know, for me, as being a part of what happened, being part of the Gujarat cases and knowing the real truth, I really feel that this needed to be. I knew that it was motivated because the timing, right, and the material was flimsy. The timing was telling. So I knew there had to be a motive, and that's what set me on the task of finding out what the motive could possibly be. And I have to say, I was just amazed by the kind of activities they've been indulging in, the BBC qua China.
Sir, before we let you go, my final question to you. Now that we know the connections, and since it is sought to be spun as a freedom of expression issue, one option is obviously ban the BBC, which can come out as a strong option. Of course, it might be supported by your constituency. The other option is obviously to take it up with the masters of the BBC or the masters on the face of it, the establishment in London, the government of the United Kingdom. You think at least that's the bare minimum we can do?
I think there should be a strong protest. I think the UK High Commissioner should be called in and should say, "What is this rubbish? I mean, you don't respect our judicial verdicts. I mean, we're not some banana republic, for God's sake. In fact, the UK has a worse record than us. I mean, half our huge criminals who have looted the country are getting safe haven in the UK. Half our criminals are running away to London and enjoying lives over there extravagantly with money looted from our banks. The BJP should respect our judicial system, especially in the criminal area, is much more robust. It may be slow, but it's much more robust. We don't give safe refuge to criminals from other countries.
Right. Good that you mentioned about the economic fugitives of law of India residing in United Kingdom. Mr. Jethmalani, in fact, of the last 21 requests for extradition made by India to the UK, only one has been sent back. That really gives you an idea of which side works at what speed. On that note, thank you so much, Mr. Jethmalani, for joining us. And I hand it over back to Shravan.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you, Shravan.
Well, thank you very much, Abhishek. Also, Parliamentarian Mahesh Jethmalani joining us on this broadcast. Yet another expose on the BBC. Serious questions being raised about the operations of the broadcaster.